Yeah, you poison that river. Why? Because it's a system. And you put the toxins in the system, and it stayed in the system. And went out to the ocean and polluted the ocean a little bit and entered into other systems because these systems are all interacting with neighboring systems. So, did she pollute a river at all? Was it the same river? You know, we can say, well, it's a different river, but here's how come that's still wrong. But that wouldn't work for the people that say there really isn't a river. What did she do then? We have to put 1,000 words on what she did, and none of them. You know, if we say the words don't have a definition, we're going to replace these words then with long sentences that are supposedly more technically accurate about what she polluted. I mean, either that long version is not going to make sense. It might be harder to see because there's more words to it. Or if it can make sense, then we can put the long sentences into the definition of river and admit that you step into the same river twice because this cycle of water down the mountain, back up the mountain, that is the river. And that system sustains, and it's the same system. Is it exactly identical? No. Nothing is exactly identical to anything else, including you to yourself later. You know, electrons stay very, very similar to themselves, but they change position. They can't stay still. And this is part of why everything has to change. So even those things that really are as solidly locked into their qualities, you know, the spin and charge of an electron, very specific quantities, and the same for all electrons. But they all have unique locations, and none of them can stay still. They keep moving, okay? So when it moves its position, is it a different electron? Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's the continuity. It's the fact that there's energy transfer going along in conservation of energy that allows us to trace changing objects, and I'd still identify them. And the idea that we should be looking for an unchanging something, and that's a phrase from philosophy related to the history of personal identity. We're looking for classical Western philosophy wants to know, well, what is personal identity? And they're looking for an unchanging something for it to be, as if it has to be, I don't know what it is, but it's got to be something unchanging, and that's a big error. No, it's got to be something changing because everything is something changing. An identity, the identity of something as an object, as the cue ball on a pool table, is not the right metaphor. The right metaphor for identity is the identity of a wave. If I go out into the water to body surf and I leap up and paddle on and catch that wave, I rode an infinite number of waves. That wave isn't really the same because 3 feet further towards the shore it's made of entirely different water. No, it's the continuity and the energy. And it's not even the same energy because the energy's been absorbed and re-emitted. So those photons and stuff are changing with the energy. But there's still this packet of energy through this idea of conservation of energy that is not going to just disappear out of the universe. And so it creates chain reactions. And we can identify these chain reactions. And in fact, that's all we can identify because everything is a chain reaction. So the model for identity should be a wave. And the concept of a river as a wave is the process of the river. And so if that's true, then we can't say that we never step in the same river twice. We can say that you step in the river the second time and it's changed. The river is never the same twice or something like this. But the idea that you can't identify the river, that's stepping too far. The value in that statement is that, yeah, things are always changing. People need to realize that. So the statement is like, a Zen koan in the sense that it's not so much the direct meaning of it, but how it affects your mind to try to think and wrap your brain around it. So it's good for people to realize that, oh yeah, it isn't the same substance. It is changing all the time. And it's good in personal identity. Your body is not the same. You don't have the same cells or even molecules as when you were an infant. It's great to point that out. But to think that means that you're not the same person because of this idea of unchanging things is to root yourself in a false metaphysics. And some people think they have to because they think it is a metaphysics and it's just stuff we knew and we have to accept it to even think anything else, but we don't. The law of identity, it has practical weaknesses because of our idea of identity. It's not that something isn't itself, it is. It's just that we're wrong about the nature of selves. We thought it was the substantial, static nature, and then we find out, no, nothing in nature is static in that sense. So, cheers.